You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dummler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host today, Nicholas Kendell, and I am riding solo once again. You know, with it being the off season and the dead season for football, Carl and I have a little bit more leeway and freedom to kind of come and go as we please. But Carl had something come up, so he is not going to be available to join us today. So that means you guys are along for the ride once again with just me. So hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode with just me, a little bit more of the same this week, as well as having Sarah Bettinger on here. And also shout out to Eric for going on the Eric Trickle, it is, for going on the Huddle Up podcast with Chad. And I believe Zach will be back this week. But you have me today. So that's exciting. I'm excited to be here once again with you guys. And before we really get going, I got to take care of a little bit of business. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we really do value your guys' input on our show. And, you know, any comments, both constructive or building us up, anything like that, we really love to hear from you guys. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and Spotify as well. I know I've had multiple listeners reach out to me like saying, hey, are you guys on Spotify yet? Yes, we are on Spotify now, so you can find us there. And also make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles on all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. Last week I've been doing some LFA articles, did edge rushers earlier last month, did interior defensive line, going to round out the defense coming up here with those long format articles, just kind of a roster analysis as we're heading into preseason. And also make sure if you enjoy the show, you head over and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where you can find the Building the Broncos podcast along with Huddle Up. And they're both shows are found under the Huddle Up podcast title. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Alrighty, and we are back on Building the Broncos, or I guess I should say I am back on Building the Broncos, flying solo today, giving Carla a little bit of day. He had something come up at work, so this is not our full-time gig. You know, we are giant football fans and definitely followers of the Denver Broncos, but we like to kind of take ourselves away from that fan label. You know, we're definitely, I would say, analysts, and especially when it comes to the draft, as far as it pertains to this show. And with it being the off season, the dead time, I'm not going to subject you guys to the 2020 draft talk that I had going last week, you know, talking about 2020 early mock drafts for the Broncos, but we're actually going to take this with the draft context and look back. So what I'm going to be doing today, and I sent this to Carl, we kind of went back and forth. So even though he's not here, he's with us in spirit today in this episode. And we're going to be ranking Elway's draft classes since he came to the Denver Broncos. So that is everything from the 2011 draft all the way up to the 2019 draft. And man, talk about just a whirlwind of stuff that's happened over the course of Elway's tenure. I mean, you had the craziness that was the Tebow years, to the Manning years, to the Simeon years, to the Case Keenum year, I guess. So a lot of ups and downs, but man, that's what football is all about. You know, it's not college football where, you know, so let's say you're an Alabama fan. Every freaking year you're going to be dominant. Like, wow, la-di-da, congrats, man. It must be really tough being a Bama fan. But in the NFL, you know, there's much more kind of ups and downs, the salary cap, players aging, contracts, free agency, et cetera, et cetera. Something that makes the Patriots even more crazy and outstanding and everything like that is just to do what they've done in the salary cap era is unprecedented. And, you know, you never want to say you'll never see something like this again, but I would say that seeing a run like they've had over the last 15 years with Brady and Belichick is something that you might not ever see again. So screw those guys. Their time's coming up, though. I know Tom Brady kisses his son and steals the youth from his children. That's pretty much what I've come down to, but that is coming to an end here, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more parity in the NFL, though, having superstar quarterbacks that can battle off back and forth, kind of the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning era, does make the league a lot more fun. And I would say that's kind of the Magic Johnson versus Larry Bird era when the NBA was at its peak, kind of growing to those Jordan Bulls years. That's kind of what we're seeing, what we saw with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. So league has changed. You know, a lot of things can change in that time period, but looking over at the last, 9 years now, is it? 9 draft classes with the Denver Broncos. And first, I'm going to have to give a to be determined grade for the first draft class that we have here, and that is the 2019 class. And, we don't have to go too far into it, but this is actually a smaller class compared to a number of the Denver Bronco classes. They did a little bit of wheeling and dealing, and in these trade situations, they did end up giving up some picks to move up, and they ended up in this class with 6 players. Not terrible, but, that's always something that makes me a little bit concerned. The smaller classes, you just have less lottery tickets. Now it's better to have a lot of picks in the top 100, which the Broncos had 4 picks in the top 100, which is great, but you never know. Those other picks, they're just lottery tickets, and typically, the Patriots model, the more you have, the better chance you have at hitting. They'll trade back a lot of times and get more and more picks, so they'll trade a current pick for a higher rated future pick, so they're just always kind of just accumulating a mass of picks. So that's really not what the case is for this 2019 class, so definitely makes it a little bit more, you have a higher chance of this class really flaming out just with less players. But obviously, this is a draft that just happened. We'll still go over it. But the first pick the Broncos had, 20th overall, Noah Fant, first-round pick, tight end from Iowa. Really excited to see what he does this upcoming season. It's going to be interesting to see, where he shakes out. He's going to get his packages. He's going to get some chance to grow out there. But, Fumagalli is kind of an interesting player who's coming in. We don't really know what he's going to bring, but he does really seem like a solid tight end 3 type, really good at finding those soft zone spots in the underneath coverage. So we'll see there. But Noah Fant, fantastic athlete, unique player, and really excited to see what he can do this year. So taking 20th overall. Second round, Broncos' first second-round pick, 41 overall, listed as a tackle here, but he'll be playing the interior offensive line. Dalton Reisner from Kansas State. Man, this was a great pick, and really fun that we were able to get him on the podcast even before the draft. Hopefully we'll be able to get him on going forward. Carl has a little bit of a connection there with Reisner, so that's exciting. A guy that seems excited to be a Bronco, so I'm excited about that pick. Then obviously Drew Lock, a guy picked 42nd overall. Many people thought he had a chance to be a first-round quarterback. Live arm, a lot of experience, but very up and down. He's kind of a discount Jay Cutler, Matt Stafford type right now where, you see the flashes, and the flashes are great. Athleticism, live arm, quick release, but just some inconsistencies there. So we'll see, but quarterbacks sound like we were talking earlier with the number of draft picks. Taking a quarterback there, I got no issue with it with Drew Lock's tools because, again, it's a lottery ticket. If you miss, you're kind of like the Browns where you took a shot at Deshaun Kaiser and the tools and everything, and didn't obviously work out, and they got a chance to get Baker Mayfield. So I have no issue with that kind of pick. Draymond Jones, 71st overall, the third-round pick, interior defensive lineman from Ohio State. Didn't test as well as many had hoped given his tape and flashes at the combine, but pretty good interior pass rusher. And we'll see. DeMarcus Walker versus him is going to be an interesting battle this year because, let's be honest, Walker really seems like his time is numbered in Denver. And then only the 2 day 3 picks, which recently the Broncos have been doing a lot in terms of day 3 picks, accumulate a lot of picks, especially with compensatory picks, those late guys, rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. This year only 2 though. They got Justin Hollins, linebacker / edge rusher from Oregon, who really athletic, long, not really a bend player. So we're going to see what he does. I think special teams year 1's probably the main role for him, but he might develop into something. We'll see. And probably the most off-the-wall player in the 2019 class was Juwan Winfrey, wide receiver from Colorado. And who knows about him? It feels like him versus Tim Patrick is going to be the battle to watch there this training camp. But should be an interesting player. Had injuries, transfer, former highly rated recruit, and a lot of talent. So we will see. It's really exciting. Hopefully, if he steps up and kind of can push Hamilton and Patrick this season, that would be fantastic for the Broncos because they have a lot of youth in the weapons category, and the more of those guys pushing there, the better. So that's the 2019 class: Fant, Reisner, Locke, Jones, Hollins, and Winfrey. It's a small class, and I know we grade these classes and the picks like immediately after, but they haven't even played a snap yet. So that's a to be determined class. However, early indications are this could be a good class for Elway and the Broncos. So we'll see. And fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed. All right, so moving on now. I'm actually going to count down backwards. So we have 8 positions here, 8 slots going from the 8th worst class, or the 8th best class, in Elway's tenure as, in the front office, general manager, director of player personnel, etc. So 8th overall, the worst class in my opinion and Carl's opinion. We kind of had a little bit of back and forth here. In the Elway's tenure for the Broncos has got to be, well, it doesn't have to be. We kind of had a little back and forth here. This is my rankings. Carl had a different one here, but we went back and forth. The 2013 class was absolutely atrocious, and it wasn't just atrocious for the Broncos. It was atrocious across the league. I feel like the only team that had a solid class that year was the likes of the Detroit Lions, who pulled in like Ziggy Ansah and Darius Slay and a couple other guys. But man, 2013, just it happens sometimes that you have really bad classes come out in the league, and 2013 was a bad year for talent just across the board, but it comes in number 8th overall. The Broncos used their first-round pick, 28th overall, on Sylvester Williams, who, granted that he even got some value during his rookie contract, that might be viewed as a win because the rest of it, not great. I mean, that whole class, not great. He played the nose tackle position, but, he's kind of miscast there, ended up leaving after his rookie contract, and he went on to the Titans and, didn't really do much there. Was drafted 28th overall, like I said. So bottom of the first round, there's a big difference between the 28th pick and a top 10 pick. So that's something to note there. And he had an okay career in Denver. He was drafted a little bit older, but not a great way to start off a draft if you're looking for a first overall pick. The second pick in that year, 58 overall, Monty Ball. Yeah, again, not a great class overall, but Monty Ball, and I know he dealt with substance abuse issues, but considering his just lack of athletic traits that really stood out and the high volume usage at Wisconsin, there was never going to be a lot of tread on the tires. And the alcoholism that came out later, you hope you'd catch something. Maybe this is insensitive, and I apologize if so, but you'd hope the team would catch a potential warning like that in the pre-draft process. And it seems like he's, on the up and up now, and thank God for that. Bless him, and hopefully things are turning around in his life. But as far as a purely football perspective, Monty Ball, 58 overall, man, what a massive, massive bust. And for a running back to use the second round pick and to get that little return on the position, that's just a further kick to the groin. Because you can find guys late that can give you something. Monty Ball, essentially undrafted free agent production there, and using a second-round pick, not great. We arrived to the Broncos' third-round pick in the 2013 draft, and we have Kayvon Webster, I would say far and away the best player in this class. And, man, he had a solid career, but, he was mostly special teams. A lot of people like to build him up, granted, because he comes off as a fantastic person, which is, that you get brownie points for me from that. Really good fan interaction, good special teams player, but never really took the field on the starting defense and didn't play much of a role. And he kind of had the same thing going on with the Rams, and now he's had a couple injuries later. So Kayvon Webster, good player, better person, and I think if Sylvester Williams and Kayvon Webster are far and away the best players in this class, not great at all. And then you have the Broncos had 2 fifth-round picks that season. They had 4 day 3 picks. He had Quanterus Smith, who never did much of anything. Knee injury kind of zapped him of his ability. Edge rusher, but that was just a mispick. Your 5th round, can't be too upset about it. Then you have Tavares King, wide receiver, who went to Georgia, who was picked up by the Panthers. I think the Broncos tried to put him on the practice squad, sneak him on there, and the Panthers ended up taking him. So the Broncos couldn't get him on the practice squad. And that did not turn out great for the Broncos. I guess it didn't really matter. Tavares King went on to have a few little impacts in the league, but really, he's one of those multitude of people who are in and out and then forgotten in the history books. Then the Broncos' 6th-round pick, Vincent Painter, his name's highlighted here in the thing. He did make some plays in the NFL, did play a little bit, but not an impact player. 6th-round pick, not upset about it, but, obviously want to hit on that guy if you can. In the 7th-round pick, Zach Dysert, quarterback, Miami, Ohio. Again, much nothing. So that was I would say the Broncos' worst overall draft in Elway's tenure. Sylvester Williams, Monty Ball, Kayvon Webster, Quanterus Smith, Tavares King, Vincent Painter, and Zach Dysert. Just a really not a great class. And luckily for the Broncos, that was kind of a year. It's like when a teacher gives out a really tough test. They didn't really cover it the way that you had hoped, and the entire class pretty much bombs it. And one random student actually did really well that typically sucks at the tests, aka the Detroit Lions, but everybody else really stunk. So you got to be a little bit graded on the curve, but still 2013, just a really bad class. Coming in 7th place in this Elway draft power rankings or countdown, whatever you want to call it, the 2017 class. And this class is one of the main reasons that the Broncos have been in the world of hurt that they have been in over the past few seasons. And Carl argued with me that this class was actually worse than the 2013 class because Sylvester Williams and Kayvon Webster gave a little bit more value than anybody has given in the 2017 class, and that might be true. But I'm going to give it a little bit more of a rosy view for now. I think that this might be blasphemous for some people, but I think the 2017 class. We'll go through it first. Garrett Bowles taken 20th overall, tackle from Utah. Then my favorite player, that's a little sarcasm for you guys, coming up next, 51st overall, DeMarcus Walker. Then the Broncos took Carlos Henderson at 82 overall, wide receiver from Louisiana Tech. Then they ended up taking Brennan Langley, cornerback from Lamar at the time, transfer from Georgia, who's now going to play wide receiver for the Broncos this year. So not off to a great start there. And then day 3 picks, Jake Butt, tight end from Michigan. Number 172 overall would be Isaiah McKenzie from Georgia, wide receiver. 203 overall, 6th round, D'Angelo Henderson, running back from Coastal Carolina. And then 253 overall, Mr. Relevant, 7th round pick, Chad Kelly, who, I'm really glad that I'm not having people yelling at me in the mentions anymore about that guy, from the likes of Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch, Chad Kelly, even Tim Tebow, man. You guys got to get off the rocker there with some of these quarterbacks. You got to move on. It's over. Kind of like Game of Thrones. Show's over, people. Move on. I'll never move on. I'm going to keep going back to that one. I can't help it. But yeah, no, this class, 7th overall, not a great class overall. I mean, Garrett Bowles has been far and away, not even close, but far and away the best player in this class. And he's been maddeningly inconsistent, and he's going to be 27 years old already coming up here. So not great. Not what you want to see. DeMarcus Walker has had, I would argue, calling back as many games where he is not dressed as he has had dressed. And for a 2nd round pick, man, we're talking about the Broncos day 3 here, and it has just been a whole lot of caca so far. But DeMarcus Walker, really a bad pick, a guy who won the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, a lot of stats, but tape never really lived up to it. A bit of a tweener body, not really a good get off, a guy who wins with secondary moves or guys, he's winning off other guys, beating their guys and then pushing the quarterback to a bad spot. So DeMarcus Walker, man, if he can step up and do something this year, that would be great, but I am just not a fan of that pick. Carlos Henderson, I actually did like this pick from a tape perspective. A lot of fun, twitched up wide receiver. The Broncos really could use some talent like that, but he had some off-field stuff that kept him from playing, and that's something you'd hope that the scouts in the pre-draft process would hit. Didn't. I believe Carlos Henderson is now on the practice squad for the Redskins, or he's on the Redskins roster, trying to get on the roster, or the final 53. But who knows? Brennan Langley, what the heck is this situation right now? Cornerback, special teams ace, first 2 years, now trying to transfer over to wide receiver. That's probably something that's not going to happen. Maybe I think he is eligible for 1 more year in the practice squad, but we'll see. But, not great there. And then you got the Broncos day 3 picks, Jake Butt. He flashed last year early, but then got hurt again. So it's just, I know you can't do this, but the fact that George Kittle went 1 pick after him, man, that really hurts. Isaiah McKenzie, honestly, the Broncos, I think, maybe give up on him a little bit too early, but he does have the turnover issues. That's something he'll always have, I believe. And while the Bills did find a way, they snatched him up for the Broncos, and he got some plays, he got some touchdowns, but he also had some turnovers and whatnot. So not great. D'Angelo Henderson, Hop, as some people like to call him, 6th round running back, one of those dime a dozen types that you take a lottery ticket on. I got no issue with it. I think he was on the Jets. I'm not sure where he's kicking around now, but that's a pick. I don't mind it. You got to give yourself a chance there. And Chad Kelly, I don't mind this pick at all. Also, I'm not a Chad Kelly fan. I don't understand why so many people are on this guy still, but the talent and everything, I don't mind taking a lottery ticket there with this late and doing a favor to Jim Kelly. But at the same time, the dude is a complete dumb donkey, if you pardon my French. And I don't know, man. There's only so many chances you should get at something like this. It's a privilege, and he's not even that good. That's the thing also. If his last name wasn't Kelly, I don't think he would be where he is at right now. Yes, he does have a live arm. He's pretty darn erratic, and he's kind of a turd, just no other way to put it. And so I don't really feel sorry for him, and people that keep bringing him up, move on. So you guys got to let me know on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, which of these two classes ends up being the worst for the Broncos, because 2013 and 2017, just two flaming piles of draft dung, so to speak. And, that's going to happen from time to time. Hopefully not always, but these are two really bad classes. And I went with the 2017 class just because Brennan Langley, I think, is a little bit worse than Kayvon Webster as far as the special teams go, but they both bring that special teams prowess, and there's a little bit of hope for Langley, where we have already seen the full extent of Kayvon Webster's career, and then the likes of Jake Butt and still has hope for that 2017 class. Isaiah McKenzie has a little bit of value, and between both classes, I think Garrett Bowles is the best player, so I went with the 2017 class over the 2013, but I could hear it either way. So, all right, well, we still have 6 more drafts by Elway that we're going to rank continuing here, but we got to take a second to, tip a cap to our sponsors. They keep the lights on for us, so we appreciate you guys patronizing them and giving us a little bit of time to highlight these people.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, riding solo today. It is a hot and muggy day in Iowa City. Going to be up in the Wisconsin area coming up here this week. Going to do a little combined bachelorette weekend. I am not a gambler, folks. Everybody wants to go to Vegas or something for the weekend, but I'm already paying for the destination wedding, and student debts is the first of the month right now. So student loans, yikes, had to pay those. So I'm not really into that Vegas thing. We're just going to go up, have a fun time, get some boats, some jet ski action, maybe have some adult beverages, and enjoy the weekend up there for the bachelorette party weekend. So paying the bills here. We're coming back from a break. We've already covered 2 of the Broncos, Elway's draft classes, and we had the 2013 class as 8th overall, the 2017 as 7th. Now I'm to the Broncos 6th overall, best draft class under Elway's tenure, or the third worst, whatever way you want to look at it. And I'm going to go with 2015 here. And this is a class that the Broncos actually did have a number of picks, and some of these guys had some time in the league, made some rosters, but again, not a very good class overall for the Denver Broncos. First overall pick, the first pick they had, 23rd overall, Shane Ray, edge rusher, who was a valuable depth edge rusher during the Broncos, but I would say if you're using a first-round pick on a pass rusher, you're hoping to get a little bit more than that from him. So not great, but not horrible. He made an impact there, and I think if it wasn't for the injury, he might have been better here. But just it never really came to fruition in Denver, so that's going to happen. And he was a valuable player for the Broncos winning a Super Bowl. Still, that depth at edge rusher did come in value, so that's important to note. But the second pick, man, one that I really didn't like at the time, and he became the butt of many jokes and people who crap on Garrett Bowles. Remember, it could always be worse. The name Ty Sembrilo, drafted 59th overall, offensive tackle from Colorado State. And I don't care if he's a goddamn skier, ESPN. I don't care how many times you say it. Doesn't make him good at football. And maybe the Broncos gave up on him too early because the Atlanta Falcons signed him to a big contract after trading for him last offseason. That's possible. He's kind of an athlete, but not very strong. Played pretty soft. But for a second-round pick, man, you're hoping to get better than that. And he just really didn't pan out here in Denver. The third pick, 92 overall, third round, and the only guy still in the Broncos, the only guy out of this list to elicit a second contract from the Denver Broncos, Jeff Heuerman. Didn't really love the pick at the time, but he's turned out to be okay. You're hoping for a little bit more from a third-round pick, but the fact that he was able to contribute some and get on the field and elicit a second contract from the Broncos, definitely I would say the most valuable player from this class. Not great. Him or Shane Ray would be the most valuable, but yeah, not great, folks. Heuerman, he did flash a lot last year. He's probably the Broncos' best blocking tight end, and he'll open up as the starter as long as health permits, which you never know with him. But that's really what it comes down to, Best availability is your availability. Hate to be a cliche guy, but that's very true. So Heuerman, solid player. Didn't really love the pick at the time, but I was okay with it. I'll be honest, I was screaming for Grady Jarrett this entire draft, and he ended up going in like the 5th round or something stupid like that. And now he's one of the top 10 interior defensive linemen in the NFL. So, yikes, NFL. I guess good me. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good if I'm getting guys right over the NFL. But the Broncos, not great there. But then you have some guys who kind of contributed here or there for the Broncos. You got the next pick, 4th round, pick 133 overall, Max Garcia, who not great, not a great player for the Broncos, but was okay. He would have been much better as kind of a depth deep offensive lineman because, you're going to need 7 to 8 guys throughout a year considering injuries and whatnot. And the fact that he was a starter, he just really never took that step that they needed him to. So an okay pick there, especially for a 4th round pick in a league that's looking for offensive linemen. I mean, we've seen horrible offensive linemen. Max Garcia was not horrible. He wasn't good, especially for a starter. He was a below average starter, but he wasn't horrible. Moving on now, Lorenzo Dawson, the 5th round, 164th overall. I mean, didn't do much of anything. He'll be another one, come and go. Thank you for your time. Maybe I'll recognize that name 25 years from now, but maybe not. Who cares? Sorry, Lorenzo Dawson, if you're listening. 6th round, the Broncos ended up taking nose tackle Darius Kilga, who I do believe is still kicking around in the league, but not a starter, just a depth kind of nose tackle piece. So that's an okay pick there in the 6th round, all things considered. 7th round, honestly, probably the best value pick in this entire class. Trevor Siemian, quarterback from Northwestern, and he didn't end up being a great quarterback. They never should have been in a situation to make Trevor Siemian the starting quarterback. Blame that on Paxton Lynch, blame that on Elway, blame that on Mark Sanchez. I don't care, but 7th round pick, he never really should have been in that situation, which is unfortunate to Trevor, but at the same time, that's just how it goes sometimes. So not a great quarterback, but for a 7th round pick, he pretty much played like a 4th or 5th round pick. So that's something. Right? Like that's a little positive. And then 2 more 7th round picks yet, both defensive backs. Trey Nixon was drafted, and as well as Josh Furman. I don't believe Josh Furman even made the final team. So one of the few drafted guys that didn't end up making the team for the Broncos in the recent history in Elway's draft. So that's the 6th overall class for Elway in his tenure. I'll read them through them again. Shane Ray, Tyson Brilo, Jeff Hireman, Max Garcia, Lorenzo Doss, Darius Kilgo, Trevor Siemian, Trey Nixon, and Josh Furman. 6th overall, not a great class, not a terrible class. They had some contributors there. Shane Ray, Tyson Brilo, Jeff Hireman, Max Garcia, Darius Kilgo, and Trevor Siemian are still in the league, so that counts for something. But not a class that propelled the Broncos and definitely didn't prepare them for life after Peyton Manning. So not a great class. Moving on now to the 5th overall ranked class for the Broncos draft classes in Elway's tenure, and I picked the 2014 class. Again, not a great one, and another class that didn't have a lot of picks, so you got to hit on those guys if you don't have a lot of picks, and they did okay. With the first pick in that class at 31st overall, the Broncos ended up taking Bradley Roby, who had an up and down time here in Denver, but I would say I guess you could argue he's been the 3rd best first-round pick for Elway in his tenure to date. And a lot of inconsistencies there in his field and his play, but really an important player for the Broncos and offered defensive back depth that was the backbone, one of the backbones at least, of the no-fly zone and the great defense that led the Broncos to the Super Bowl in 2015. So Bradley Roby, Ohio State, considering 31st overall, that's a pretty good deal. I know he only got a 1-year contract from the Texans and everything like that. There's been some questions about, attitude and his engagement and, physicality, et cetera, consistency on the field. And that's something that matters. But overall, we're already going through this, and that is far and away the best first-round pick that the Broncos have had so far. Maybe Noah Fant. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but that really does help this class a lot. Then you got Cody Latimer, who never really lived up to the hype, and that's one thing that always kind of concerns me with the Broncos, with wide receivers. We heard all this hype last offseason with Courtland Sutton, and thank God that it turned out to be somewhat true. He didn't end up being Rookie of the Year, killing people out there, that he wasn't in preseason. Granted, offensive system, pass blocking, quarterback, all not great. Hit that rookie wall also, but yeah, he's somebody that Cody Latimer just never lived up to it, and it's too bad because good athlete, really strong blocker, which I love from a wide receiver, and he's still kicking with the Giants, but just more of a special teams guy. You don't want that for the 56 overall pick, especially considering that 2014 class at wide receiver was phenomenal. Odell Beckham, Allen Robinson, Mike Evans, Sammy Watkins, Jarvis Landry, among others. So Cody Latimer really stands out as a disappointment. And then Michael Schofield, he's actually developed a decent little career for himself post Denver. He's a guy that, kind of like Max Garcia, never a guy that you really want to be starting. And unfortunately for Schofield, he was kind of a tweener, not really long enough that you wanted that tackle. Also didn't really have the chops, the strength, the nastiness to play inside. So a flex guy, you'd love to have him as depth. And I maybe love's a little strong. You'd like to have him as depth. But as a starter, not great. So the Broncos took him in the 3rd round. And then 5th round, they took Lamont Barrow. Didn't really do much of anything from LSU. But these next 2 picks is really where this class is salvaged. And Matt Paradis in the 6th round, 207 overall, ended up being one of the best centers in the league during his time in Denver. Really good player. And it's sad to see him go. I get it, the knees. You don't want to pay that money. You got to allocate your resources, etc. But, man, he was a massive hit and really just a testament to the development there during that time. So hats off to Matt Paradis. And then an underrated player in this class, especially and the Broncos over the past few seasons, especially when it comes to special teams, Corey Nelson, 242nd overall pick, 7th round. And he's a guy that, on the Broncos for a number of years, one of their better special teams player and a good backup at linebacker. So, not a great class overall for the Broncos there. It's 5th for a reason, but we're starting to get a little bit better and walking out with a duo with only 6 picks of Bradley Roby and Matt Paradis really does help stabilize that class and at least add a little bit of contributions. All right, the 4th overall class now, and this one is that there's really a tier difference. I think after the 5th and the 4th, you could put a line and saying these classes are much better than these classes. And we'll just kick it off here. The first pick, honest to God, the first pick, if you'd have made it the last pick, it'd be much more palatable because the first pick was the worst pick. And we are talking about none other than everybody's favorite video game player, Paxton Lynch, taken 26 overall by the Broncos in the 2016 class. Man, what a yikes that guy ended up being. Really sent the Broncos down a hole for a bit. I would say that the terribleness of the 2017 class overall in combination with the taking Paxton Lynch overall and setting the team back at quarterback for a number of years is what has the Broncos at this lowly state right now. Vance Joseph did not help, but there's a lot of things. A lot of people like to pile things on one individual person when there's a lot of people that deserve fault for the Broncos being in their lowly state over the past few years. But 2016 draft, Paxton Lynch overall, for 26 overall, just bad, man. Just not good. Then we can move on, though. And the depth of this class and all the picks from the 2nd round on really just salvage this. And, man, if the Broncos would have hit that 1st round pick, this could have been arguably one of their best classes. But missing on that quarterback, that 1st overall pick, just hurts too much. So 4th overall they come, 2016. You got Adam Gotsis, drafted 63rd overall. Just came on slowly, coming off that ACL injury last offseason. Some treacherous situations as far as an assault, but this year could really be a breakout year for him. I'm excited to see what he can do. Then in the 3rd round, they took Justin Simmons, who down year last year, but the sky's the limit still for this guy. Really good safety prospect, was really good at Boston College. And then day 3, I mean, every single one of these guys has made somewhat of an impact for the Broncos. In the 4th round, they took Devontae Booker, who the fans have a weird relationship with him. They think he's terrible when really he's a niche running back. He's got to be a part of a tandem kind of backfield. He has his role. He's a good blocker. He's a good receiver. And he can get some carries between the tackles when you need him to, but that's just not his strength. Doesn't have great vision, doesn't have amazing start and stop kind of ability. So if you could get him in a running back by committee, there's a lot of value there. A little bit older when he was drafted, a lot more hope for him, but I think that rookie season behind that dreadful offensive line in 2016 really just put him off on the wrong foot for the fans, and just hasn't been able to recover. But there's value there for Devontae Booker. 5th round, 144 overall, the Broncos ended up taking Connor McGovern, is he an adequate starter? Yes. Is he an above average starter? He hasn't been there yet. He's trending in that Max Garcia area. I do think he's better than Max Garcia, but that's kind of the area that I see him right now. So this will be his 4th year in the league. That's contract season again for another guy. So we'll see. All these guys are going to be free agents, so I might as well just quit saying that. And so Connor McGovern, solid player. Really like the value there in the 5th round that they're getting out of him here. Hopefully he can take another step this year, but a solid pick there for the Broncos. And again, all these picks from Paxton Lynch, after Paxton Lynch, not from Paxton Lynch, but Adam Gotsis onwards have been pretty solid picks for the Broncos. The 6th round, 173 overall. Andy Janovich, fullback, still kicking, special teams guy. Don't really love the fullback unless you're Kyle Juszczyk, but we'll see what he can do in this Scangarello offense. I'm excited to see what Jano can do, but in the 6th round, pretend he's a linebacker that never sees the field really on defense, but is just an awesome, high-energy special teams player. That's fine. That's especially for a 6th round pick. That's fine. So solid pick there. And then Will Parks in the 6th round, still 219 overall, and he's been really good, and especially considering his draft slot. And we'll see. He might fight his way onto the field to be a starter this year. We'll see how it plays out, considering how much different kind of defensive back situations get back there. I would argue that he is a starter. He should be getting some highlights this season, and one that really I'm really keeping an eye on both those safeties, both Simmons and Parks this season. And finally, Riley Dixon, still kicking in the league. I think he's with the Giants right now. And 7th round pick, I don't love using a draft pick on a punter. Honestly, that might drop it a little bit for me this class. But the fact that he is still kicking in the league, both, there's no puns there. Pun definitely intended. Is, for a 7th round pick, that's fine. So really a pretty good class overall. If you take out Paxton Lynch, imagine if I was talking with Carl again. I sent him this just to see what his thoughts were before we went on with this. And I said, man, imagine if you could flip Adam Gotsis and Paxton Lynch around. You'd get Chris Jones, my boy, for the Broncos at the 31st pick, actually. They would have, because they traded up to get Lynch. And then end up taking Dak Prescott in the 2nd round, which is something that I was pining for the Broncos to do. And, man, you talk about, I would say that's the best class the Broncos have taken so far. At least top 2. But alas, Paxton Lynch really puts a dark cloud over it. So that's the fourth overall ranking for the Broncos in their draft class rankings in Elway's tenure. And we still have 3 more to go, but I'm going to take another quick break here, going to grab some water and give you guys a chance to get a break from my voice.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All righty, folks, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, and I am alone today, and in this world and in life. No, I'm just kidding. But no Carl today with me, so I'm just running through the Elway classes because this is the team building podcast, but it's a dead period, so it's kind of fun to look back and kind of see on, be a little bit of Monday morning quarterback and talk about these Elway draft classes. Moving on now, we've had the tiers 4 through 8 so far, and I'll just read 4 through 8 to see where we're at right now. We have the 2016 class coming in 4th. 5th, we have the 2014 class. 6th, we have the 2015 class. 7th, we have the 2017 class. And then 8th, we have the 2013 class. So we have the final 3 to go. And 3rd overall, I went back and forth with 3rd and 2nd place. I think they are close, but just because of we need a little bit more time to marinate on this class. So 3rd overall, I have the 2018 class for the Denver Broncos. And, man, what a high volume class as far as number of picks, but also the quality. I really think this could be a class that really sets the foundation for the Broncos going forward. And, Vance Joseph, people give him a lot of crap, but he does get some credit for assessing talent and this draft class, which turned out to be pretty good. Normally it takes a full season for a coaching staff to kind of be integrated and get their guys in there, which is something that makes me, questioning the 2019 class. We'll see how that goes. But the 2018 class looks really good. And, when you're as bad as the Broncos were, you're picking really early every single round. So that helps a little bit in getting better talent. So something to definitely know there. But overall, looking at this class, you got Bradley Chubb, 5th overall, 1st round pick for the Broncos, who looks like an emerging super stud star, fantastic beast god. And then you got the 40th overall, Cortland Sutton, who could emerge into a wide receiver 1. I want to see more from him. I'd like to complement him with a different type of wide receiver opposite him that can be a little bit more speed, inside-outside ability. Kind of a super Emmanuel Sanders version would be great for the Broncos to complement Sutton, but looking pretty good there with the 40th overall. Probably my least favorite pick in this class, 71st overall, Royce Freeman. Kind of had a little bit of Monty Ball vibes when they picked him, a running back with a lot of carries without much juice in the legs. Didn't love that pick, especially because it's running back, but, not a terrible pick there. Isaac Yiadom, 99th overall. He has a chance to really emerge this season. He's one that I'm very interested to see if he can take the next step, because that could change how the Broncos, the dynamic of the offense or the defense and how they're going using the cornerback position going forward. And then day 3, Broncos had a lot of day 3 picks in 2018. You have Josie Jewell at 106 overall from Iowa, who's going to be a starter this year. Tayshaun Hamilton at 113 overall, who's going to be a starter this year, wide receiver at Penn State. In the 5th round, they took Troy Fumagalli, who spent last season as a redshirt year coming off that sports hernia injury, but he's going to be one that's interesting to see. Sam Jones is a guy who might be a year off yet for the Broncos starting, but I think he's got a chance to be a solid player for the Broncos here, and a lot of high talk on him, so we'll see. Maybe he can challenge Connor McGovern for that center spot, or even take it over if Connor McGovern leaves after the season. It's definitely a possibility. And then 6th round, Keyshawn Bierria. He's a guy that I'm skeptical he'll make the roster this year, but you never know. He's still cheap, young, and that matters when you're filling out a roster. And then in the 7th round, 26 overall, the Broncos took David Williams, running back from Arkansas, who ended up catching on with the Jags, I believe, when they didn't make the Broncos' final 53. So overall, just a pretty darn good class, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the undrafted superstar running back. Superstar might be a little bit heavy. He's not Bradley Chubb level as stardom goes, but Phillip Lindsay, running back from Colorado, definitely needs to be mentioned here, although he isn't drafted by Elway, undrafted free agent. I'm going to add him here just because he deserves it. So that's the 3rd ranked class, and really, it's yet to be seen for a lot of these guys, especially the middle rounds. I'm already pretty confident in Bradley Chubb and Cortland Sutton and Phillip Lindsay. We know those guys are good. How much better can they be? That can change us a lot. But it's really the Royce Freeman, the Isaac Yiadom, the Josie Jewell, the Tayshaun Hamilton, the Troy Fumagalli, the Sam Jones. Those guys are the ones who I'm really just not sure what to make of yet. But early returns look really promising. And this could be a class that, like I said, builds the foundation for this winning team going forward. And when you really start to get things going for you is when you can start to stack draft classes. That's the big thing. So this class, it could emerge as the best draft class for the Broncos, looking back 10 years from now. But right now, I feel like just playing a little bit more conservatively, I'll have them ranked 3rd. All right, moving on to the 2nd overall best draft class in Elway's tenure. We have the 2012 class, and this is one I went back and forth on, but was I going to make them 3rd or 2nd? I decided to make them 2nd because they're more of a known quantity and really did have some great hits in this class, despite some misses there in the middle. But first we have Derek Wolfe. The Broncos traded down and ended up taking Derek Wolfe at the 36th overall pick, so just the 4th pick in the 2nd round. And he's turned out to be a heck of a player. He's not going to be going to Canton. He's not a consistent Pro Bowl type, but really just a solid hit there and culture piece for the Broncos as well, man. Really been a great player for the Broncos. You got to love yourself some Derek Wolfe. Next pick, 2nd round, 57 overall. The Broncos end up taking Brock Osweiler, who is, he's an interesting player for the Broncos because he did leave them for the Texans and flame out horribly there. That definitely is something that needs to be noted. But do the Broncos win Super Bowl 50 without him? I mean, when Manning goes down, you have a quarterback that the team was comfortable in turning to give Manning some time to keep those bullets in the chamber, so to speak, in that arm. And he did enough to keep the Broncos' heads afloat. I mean, that game against the Patriots in the snow, one of my favorite games of all time. I'll never forget that. And he was huge. He was huge in that. And he came back 2 years ago and offered us some more depth and came in, and I would argue he was the 2nd best quarterback on that team that season. Should have been starting as soon as he came on, better than Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch. So kind of a complicated, nuanced way to look at Osweiler, I know, but that's not a horrid miss. You definitely want to hit better at the quarterback, especially when Russell Wilson's in that class. But, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, right? Moving on now, we got these next 3 picks really kind of lower this class, and one reason I thought maybe to have the 2018 class over them, but you got Ronnie Hillman taken 67th overall, another horrible mid-round pick on running back. Really consistently, the Broncos missing on those 2nd and 3rd round running back picks. So Royce Freeman, you better break that trend. Then you got Omar Bolden, who was coming off an injury and just never really was the same after that. So I don't mind that pick in the 4th round, 101 overall, but not great. Then you got Phillip Blake, interior offensive lineman from Baylor, and he's another one who just ended up being a whole lot of nothing. So, lottery or draft picks are lottery picks. You never know. There's always a chance they're going to bust. You can do all the work in the world, the best tape, still a chance that guy can bust. You never know. They're humans. So something you got to account for. But really, it's the 5th and 6th round pick here that make this class just incredibly strong. And the reason that I picked them to be the second best class under Elway, and that is Malik Jackson and Danny Trevathan, both just huge, stellar standouts for the Broncos in those elite defensive years. Both of them still highly paid players in the NFL. The Broncos weren't able to retain either of them. That's going to happen when you got a huge contract like Von Miller on the defensive side and other things. But both those guys, to get those guys in the 5th and 6th round in the same draft really just makes this class, it gives them a huge boost. There's no other way to put it. Both those guys up the middle. Malik Jackson was the best interior pass rusher the Broncos have had in God knows how long, and him and Derek Wolfe combined really helped that defense be propelled to the next level. Sylvester Williams was starting in the middle there, but really it was, let's not kid ourselves. It was Malik Jackson and Derek Wolfe were the reasons that those pass rushers on the inside were able to do stuff with Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware and Shaq Barrett and Shane Ray outside of them. So really a good class. And then Danny Trevathan, I think going with Brandon Marshall over Danny Trevathan was the right move considering the injuries and the skill sets, but hindsight 2020. And Danny Trevathan still kicking it with Chicago. He has had some injuries. He's a big contract, but he's an important player there on that defense. And him and Roquan Smith make a pretty good athletic duo there. And so that's something that you need to account for. And really just if the Broncos could end up getting another year where they get hit on a 5th and 6th round pick, like they hit on Danny Trevathan and Malik Jackson, that could really just be a huge turnaround for this team really quickly. Those are the guys. Imagine if the Broncos this past year and Justin Hollins ends up being a Pro Bowl level player, and then Juwan Winfrey ends up being a really, really good starter that could be, a highly paid player on the open market. How much would that change this Broncos draft class coming up here, or the 2019 class? Would be huge. So that's one thing. Tip the caps there to that 2012 team. And then 2011, coming in at number 1 overall. And the big reason you got to tip your cap is Von Miller. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best pass rushers of this generation. He's one of the best defensive players in this generation. He's one of the best players of this generation. The heart and soul of this team, the identity of the team. And just appreciate, I always say this when we talk about Von Miller, and maybe I'm, starting to realize that, this is Von Miller's time is going to come to an end eventually. So just appreciate every snap that you can watch him, because watching him do work is like art. His ability, his bend, his get off, it's rare. It's alien-esque. So appreciate Von Miller. 2nd overall pick. He was supposed to be an elite player, but man, that 2011 class, talk about an antithesis to the 2013 class, which was trash. 2011, just littered with talent. But Von Miller, I can't even argue that would be the wrong pick at the time. The only other player that you could make an argument for that would have been better there, I guess 2. You could say Cam Newton, just if you're doing the quarterback weight, although I probably wouldn't, although Cam is very talented. He was kind of overrated in the Super Bowl years. Now I think he's to the point where he's underrated, which is kind of weird to say, but that's where we're at. And then obviously J.J. Watt, who hasn't had the health that Von Miller's had, but his peak years were unlike anything we've ever seen. Aaron Donald's doing some of the stuff right now, but I think people were already quick to move on from how good J.J. Watt is during his peak season. So that's definitely something to mention. And then after that, you have a lot of guys who aren't active in the league anymore, but had some flash. And Raheem Moore, his name is infamy for the Broncos, unfortunately. And a lot more of that with Joe Flacco coming here brought up a lot more. But he was solid during his time, and he had that compartment syndrome in his leg, which was horrifying, and that was almost lost his leg. But he was okay during his time in Denver. Not what you want from the 45th overall pick, but that's okay. And then Orlando Franklin, really solid player there for a bit. Injuries kind of cut his career short, but he was a really good player there for the Broncos for a number of seasons. Nate Irving never really lived up to the hype. Quentin Carter, again, a guy, I think he actually ended up in jail, safety from Oklahoma. Not great there. But then you got Julius Thomas, who, Broncos took in the 4th round, 129th overall, and not in the league anymore. But, it's 2011. Things can change a lot since then. And he was really a good pick for the Broncos and emerged. And, would the Broncos have been the Broncos if Orange Julius didn't emerge in those early Manning years? I don't know. He was a huge part of that offense in the red zone and everything like that and scoring those touchdowns. So really good pick there for the Broncos. That elevates it a lot. Mike Muhammad, linebacker from Cal, out of the league by now. Didn't really do much of anything with the Broncos. 7th round pick, Virgil Green still kicking it. One of the 2 players in this class that are still kicking it in the league. 7th-round pick, 204 overall from Nevada. Tested awesome. Never really developed in the pass catcher you'd want him to be, but a good blocking tight end and a good tight end too. I wouldn't have been upset if the Broncos re-signed him. Instead, he goes to the Chargers. Not a great player as far as a tight end. One option, just not that natural receiver. But his ability as a blocker and the nuance and the physicality he has, I mean, that adds value. So really getting the likes of Von Miller, Orlando Franklin, Virgil Green, and Julius Thomas, that'd make this class probably number 1. It'd be up there for sure. But then if we're going to include Philip Lindsay and talk about that 2019 class, we got to talk about the best undrafted free agent that I can recall for the Broncos in recent history, Chris Harris Jr. I know the whole contract thing, getting older, blah, blah, blah. Dude's been a stud since day one. Amazing Bronco player. Best nickel cornerback in the league. I don't know if he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame, but damn, he's going to end up in the Broncos Ring of Fame. And this might be his last year in Denver, but my God, man, what an absolute hit. The fact that talents at defensive back like Aqib Talib and Chris Harris Jr. can come from a lowly football institution like Kansas and end up being this good in the league is pretty damn just incredible and needs to be, I guess, commended. I don't even know what to say. It's such a weird thing. But Chris Harris Jr., that along with Von Miller, if you add Chris Harris Jr., this to me makes this obviously the best class in Elway's tenure, which is kind of scary because at the same time, like that's the class that he did first. Like, you're hoping that they're improving over time, right? Like getting better every single class. And that hasn't been the case. But when you balance that with how many picks they had in this class and the fact that the Broncos were picking 2nd overall, that does add a bit to it. So, yeah, there you guys have it. The Broncos, or Elway's draft classes ranked as far as his career in Denver in the front office. The best class, in my opinion, the 2011 class with Von Miller, Raheem Moore, Orlando Franklin, Nate Irving, Quentin Carter, Julius Thomas, Mike Muhammad, Virgil Green, and Jeremy Beal. 2nd place, we have the 2012 class, in which the Broncos took Derek Wolfe, Brock Osweiler, Ronnie Hillman, Omar Bolden, Philip Blake, Malik Jackson, and Danny Trevathan. In 3rd place, we have just the recent 2018 class with Bradley Chubb, Cortland Sutton, Royce Freeman, Isaac Yiadom, Josie Jewell, Deshaun Hamilton, Troy Fumagalli, Sam Jones, Keyshawn Bierria, and David Williams, and the honorable mention Philip Lindsay, of course. 4th overall, we have the 2016 class, which if not for Paxton Lynch, would have been a really, really good class. Yeah, Adam Gotts is there as well as Paxton Lynch, Justin Simmons, Devontae Booker, Connor McGovern, Andy Janovich, Will Parks, and Riley Dixon. Then things really start to go downhill from there. The 2014 class, you got Bradley Roby, Cody Latimer, Michael Schofield, Lamont Barrow, Matt Paradis, and Corey Nelson. In 6th place, you have the 2015 class with Shane Ray, Tyson Bryla, Jeff Hireman, Max Garcia, Lorenzo Doss, Darius Kilgo, Trevor Simeon, Teron Nixon, and Josh Furman. In 7th place, you got the 2017 class, which is a bunch of woof. You got Garrett Bowles, DeMarcus Walker, Carlos Henderson, Brendan Langley, Jake Butt, Isaiah McKenzie, D'Angelo Henderson, and Chad Kelly. There's still some hope for that class, folks, but we really need Brandon Langley, Jake Butt, and Garrett Bowles and DeMarcus Walker even to come out and do something. So still hope there, folks. We'll see. 8th place, the worst class in my opinion, the 2013 class, Sylvester Williams, Monty Ball, Kayvon Webster, Quantera Smith, Tavares King, Vincent Painter, and Zach Dysert. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You guys, if you have any opinions on Elway's draft classes, where I messed up, where you disagree with me, where you do agree with me, hit me up on Twitter and follow me on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. And also make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle and follow them as well. They're at Mile High Huddle, and follow the Twitter account for the podcast at BTB Football Pod. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. And that's going to be it today. We'll have Carl back. We're going to record tomorrow with him, and not sure exactly what we're going to talk about yet, but it'll be something fun. It's still the off-season talk, nothing too nitty-gritty, but that's going to wrap up today's episode. We hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.